My sisters and brothers, may the Lord give you peace. Thank you for joining us. Now, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's get to it. First of all, our Jewish brothers and sisters tell the story of a young group of students asking their rabbi, why does it say in the Torah that God places the Torah, the commandments, on our heart and not in our heart? Why does God do that? And the wise rabbi said, God places the Torah on your heart so that when your heart breaks, God's law, which is love, will fall more deeply into your heart. This Lent, we have been reading about the great stories that capture our imagination, creation and recreation. It began with the story of Noah's Ark, then the story of Abraham and Sarah, a couple as good as dead. But let's be clear, the stories we tell about our world and our place in it all do have commandments hidden all throughout them, and we obey without thinking. But if we think about it, we see that we have been bombarded by commandments all our lives. You shall not be open to the new. You shall be a spectator of your life and not an active participant of it. You shall always have someone to blame. You shall strike first. You shall go through life without responsibility or consequence. You shall not think or feel deeply. You shall stay drugged. You shall not listen to the cries of the needy. But the 10 Commandments are considered the heart of the Torah, 10 practical guidelines for a healthy life. The people of Israel saw them as their experience of their God-human relationship. In other words, they were the minimum required of women and men in order they might hear God. The first, of course, is the longest because it is the most basic sin, turning something less than God into God. Oh, we're not setting up golden calves, but let me share the words of a Jewish rabbi on the first commandment. God should not be an extension of me. I have enough of my ego, which is what a false God is, an extension of ourselves. The whole purpose of a God is that life is not about you, that you answer to someone higher. You're accountable, and that's a gift. When a student attaches himself to a rabbi, you would bring a cup of water and the rabbi would empty it and say, come back when you are like this cup, empty. You don't grow when you are full. You only grow when you are empty. So idolatry is making God into an extension of my ego. But one more example here. It's great to meet so many people who fight for causes, and we should. However, when people care more about immigration or abortion than they do about the teachings of Jesus, that's idolatry. When it comes to furthering their cause or being a good disciple, many choose to go with their cause, saying unchristian things, behaving in unchristian ways. You can see their God is not Jesus. It's their cause. If gaining ground on an issue requires us to violate just one of the 10 Commandments or ignore the Sermon on the Mount, if even for a second and you do it anyway, it might be time to cleanse the temple of our hearts. The third commandment, I just want to jump around a couple of these. The third commandment, again from another rabbi. You Christians never understood the meaning of the third commandment. Do not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. You thought that it meant you were not to say, God damn you, which is not a nice thing to say. But that is not even close to the commandment. Vain or venus is emptiness. To speak something in vain is to speak it with emptiness. So the meaning of the commandment, as it was understood for centuries in Judaism, was, don't even speak the name. Don't ever in your lifetime pronounce the sacred name of Yahweh. Never. And he said, this gave us a cosmic humility before God. Isn't that wonderful? A cosmic humility before God. Because once you think you have God in your pocket, that you understand the great mystery, religion always becomes arrogant and idolatrous, where we love all our explanations of God rather than actually falling in love with God. And then he added, and some of you know this, that when you write Hebrew, you actually just write the consonants. And what it means to be an educated Jew is to memorize the appropriate vowels and where to place them. He said, did you know that the consonants of the sacred name Yahweh, YHWH, are in fact the only consonants that if correctly pronounced, if correctly pronounced, do not allow you to use your tongue or your lips. In fact, we know that pronouncing the sacred name was an attempt to imitate breath. Now, at this point, I'm thinking he's crazy. But then I'm listening and I'm thinking, wait a minute, the story of creation, how many times do we hear about breath, right? That it was inhalation and exhalation. And then the rabbi began to do it in the microphone. Try that sometimes, practice it. See what happens to your prayer life. And what that means, wonder of wonders, is that the first word you ever spoke when you came out of your mother's womb was the name of God. And the last word you will ever speak, you won't have to remember or think about what prayer do I have to say. You're going to pray anyway. The last breath you take on your deathbed will be the name of God. And it's just one thing you have done constantly. You just did it. And you did it again. You're breathing. And you know what? There's not a Catholic way of breathing or a Protestant way of breathing. There's not an American way of breathing. There's not a Buddhist or a Muslim way of breathing, not a white way of breathing. We are all doing this together. And this wonderful God has made God's self that available. Now one more commandment, the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. In other words, everything stops, right? The day is to rest in the mystery, to enjoy the mystery, to sing of the mystery. The Lord is saying basically here, okay, we have to teach this people that I am their lover, that I am their power, that I am their life. And so just one day a week, 1/7 of your time at least, you stop proving yourselves. You stop achieving. You stop accomplishing. You stop doing anything that's task-orientated. And you let me do the saving. You let me do the liberating. You let me do the loving. This is the meaning of the Sabbath rest. To trust in the Lord, to wait upon the Lord, to rest in the Lord, to allow God to be gracious to you. That what happens during the week might just give you an opportunity to share what's something you received on the Sabbath. And then we come to our gospel, and this is the action that finally gets Jesus killed. After this, they are dead set against him. Now, we might have to ask why this hot anger in this temple, where does this hot anger come from? I think we all have hot buttons, but wow, this is a big one. But, everyone, first of all, wants to jump on the money changers. Now, they were there because the Jews, especially at Passover, came from all over. And they brought with them the Roman coins with Caesar's image on them. And Caesar being considered a god, these coins had to be converted to the imageless temple money of Jewish exchange. That's understandable. The money changers could take a little for their work. That is understandable. What may have angered him may be seen in this little curious line that's only in Mark. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. Now, what we need to know is the temple consisted of a series of courts leading into the temple. First, there was the court of the Gentiles, then the court of the women, then the court of the Israelites, then the court of the priests. All the buying and the selling is going on in the court of the Gentiles, which was the only place a Gentile could ever go and go no further. So if there was a Gentile whose heart God had touched, he had or she had to stay out in the court of the Gentiles to meditate and pray, in the very area that had become a veritable mall of ATMs, a circus of noise and transactions. Jesus was moved to the depths of such anger because seeking men and women seeking God, were being shut out from drawing closer to the presence of God. Or a second clue as to what may have angered Jesus so much was the gouging of the poor. And that is happening in the holiest of places yet. The reason I gave you the original Greek, get these birds out of here, was that it's a clue to Jesus' anger. The ordinary people had to sacrifice oxen and sheep to be right with the priesthood and with the temple. But if you were really poor, you were allowed to offer a turtle dove. Exactly, if you remember the story of Jesus' presentation, It was all Mary and Joseph were able to offer. Jesus knows that this religion is not taking care of the poor. It's in fact stealing from the poor and making the poor give the little money they have to feel right before God. Yes, Jesus is angry about this. And many use this passage to even justify violence because it appears as if Jesus is pretty violent. But note, he's violent toward things, not toward people. He's liberating animals and trying to liberate the poor from their oppression. And of course, the religious leaders just want to protect the building. It's all about the building, the temple, the church. But what we have in this story is Jesus redefining the temple. That the new temple is the human person. He says, I am the temple. And of course, soon we will learn that we are the body of Christ. So the temple is transferred from any kind of physical building. These are nice, don't get me wrong. These are nice, but this is not the church. You are the church. And if your faith would not continue after this building is long gone, then this building really means nothing. So we see Jesus making this great revolution of religion from a concern for sacrifice by which we earn God's love to, in fact, trust through which we know God's love. And where does that trust happen? In the human heart. There is where it all happens. So Jesus, to be perfectly honest, and this gospel makes pretty clear, Jesus has little use for external religion. Now, I know we're all here. I'm dressed up. We're in the middle of external religion. But it still gives me a platform to talk this way. It gives you a place to come hopefully expand your heart and your mind and your soul. But brothers and sisters, if it isn't achieving that, we might as well cleanse this temple just as it was cleansed in Jerusalem. Church buildings mean nothing. It's all about the people, and not just the comfortable people, not just the people on the top, but as Jesus makes very clear, especially, maybe most especially, the little people around the edges and at the bottom. Finally, you can tell the truth of our religion by how it treats the weakest and the poorest among us.